Okay, so we're talking about the Do It program. And they work with kids with disabilities. So they have now changed. I just talked to their founder, Cheryl, and Cheryl said that they now pretty much are strictly college students. Like once the kids are out of high school, they can get into the program. They're mainly just in the state of Washington now with their funding. When we did it with our daughter, I mean, we went and there's 14 kids, and that's still the same now, that they take as scholars. You have to apply to get accepted into it. And it turns out that Microsoft and Hewlett Packard worked to make these kids with their disabilities be able to function normally with anybody else. And I hate to say, I haven't seen anybody do as well on computers as these kids. They have some amazing software, some amazing computer, and their skills are very impressive. So it turns out that Crystal and her group, we had a kid from the Valley that was shot, super athlete before this happened. And there's some that were blind. So they had their keyboards that were so they could use them as when they were blind, you know, with all the different figures there. Crystal had a program that they wrote up for her that was just for her, that with her vision of seeing her letters like she does, and also her reading and speech impediment, it can pick up her speech, type it as she says it, spells, corrects it, and I think it had like 14 different languages it could convert it to. And they also color code them, because a lot of the kids, and if you found out with a lot of your 4-Hers, if they have different disabilities as far as dyslexia, if you put the different colored backgrounds, they can pick it up easier and read it easier. And so they help with stuff like that. They offered to come into our school system and put in a whole computer lab, which our school turned down at the time, and also train everybody on it. So I asked Cheryl, because I did not know what this group wanted, and I was not sure what the Do It program, where they were now as far as, because everything's changing. Cheryl said they are strictly high school, the state of Washington now. And they go through U of W. They still do 14 scholars, the 18 a year. So any of our kids could apply for it. They are willing to come and talk to us and tell us what they do, answer any of our questions. I told them about our fair, where if it goes viral and we have to use computers, we're not sure yet. And they said, yeah, they'd come and help. Doug would be the person we would need to talk to then. And he is the one that does all the computer, like setting up computer, certain disabilities and their problems and stuff like that. She said that they'd be willing to help us with any of that, because they are now having to go viral themselves for even school for their kids instead of classroom for next year. And she said, so that is being a big challenge for them, is to get this all organized for these kids. I know my daughter's in her 30s and they're still helping her. So I know they've still got a lot of kids that aren't just students. She said that they could do any of that. They also have extra computers, so if that's something we need, they probably could work that out. She also asked if we needed, they are advocates and big into setting up like the laws and making sure that kids can go ahead and function and get around in the areas and stuff like that. So they'd be able to help with that if we need it or want it. And I know some have said that the Do It program's already helping in with WSU in some of our different programs. So they're already active with us. She was just, she feels like I do. You don't want to separate those kids out. You want to have them join in and help that way. And they're willing to do that and help us in any way we like. Willing to answer any questions if you have any, like 4-Hers that might need help with different things as far as their disabilities go or things like that. So I wasn't sure, and I did not want to go ahead and have Cheryl. She said she'd come on a Zoom meeting with us if we'd like, but I figured I wanted to see what you guys wanted before I went any further and what we needed or what you were interested in. But they said they'd help with any information that we would like. And I also found out, because WSU, we tried to get the information of how many kids we have 4-Hers that have disabilities. Abby's been amazing trying to help me get this stuff, but we still haven't got the numbers back from that. So I thought that'd be sort of cool and interesting to see. Cheryl did mention that if we had any kids that were graduating, they can apply that need help with them. Like I know 20 some years ago, our program was over $2,000 to $3,000 just for the simple computer program at that time. And they just gave it to Crystal. So, and they're updating it all the time, and she's in her 30s now for her. So if you do have kids, there's ways that they can excel in 4-H, especially with the different programs like that. Plus, they have a bunch of scholarships and jobs, she said, and I saw that they just got a $300,000 grant for a science project that they're doing. And their kids, they have scholarships for them that go into computers, into science, into technology. And so if you know any of the 4-Hers that want to apply or need something like that, this is a great opportunity. And they'd be someone great to work with hand in hand, I think. So are there any questions?
So Carla, this is Jana. Since the Do It group is grant funded, did they state that they were willing to do all this for no money, or is that still not been discussed?
Okay, I did not know what you guys, quote unquote, wanted from them, because it's sort of, each person's, I know I even talked with Abby, has sort of given us a little different ideas or things that they were interested in. She said, she asked me specifically, what are you looking for? And I said, well, I know information, number one, because they already know what projects will work and what ones will not work as far as the computer systems go and stuff. So that may help us at fair time if we're needing to look into that type stuff, and they can help set it up. She made it sound like they could probably help with that.
Sure.
You know, I mentioned the computers if we needed a bunch of them. They're right there at the U of W, so that'd probably be a little easier too. But nothing was decided because I do not have that right to ask those questions, or, you know, to set up an agreement. I wanted to see what you guys wanted and then go from there, because I don't want to cross any lines. And I don't want to waste Cheryl's time, because swamped with trying to get this new program set up for them also.
Right. I've had a lot of experience with people that are grant funded, and they're all willing to do a whole lot for you. And then when you get right down to it, they start quoting you the costs. And I know that Nancy has reached out to the director, and she's going to be chatting with her. One of the issues that we have whenever we get interagency programs like that, and particularly in this arena, their university may have chosen to do things a certain way, but our university may not choose to follow that same path of thinking. So we have to make sure that everybody's on board with doing the right thing, and unfortunately making accommodations and stuff. Sometimes it gets into the legal realm, which isn't all that fun to be around. But you know, I think
in the legal realm. Oops. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I'm just saying that
the legal realm, they definitely know as far as for the kids, they're advocates. And I probably would have to disagree with you, because working with them like I did with my daughter, we didn't have to pay a dime. Now,
no,
the school, they offered to come into our school and set it up free.
Yeah, I understand that, but their grants now, and the way that grants work, they're saying that their grants are focused on college age kids, and so they can't use those grant funds to pay for programming with underaged, with non-college kids. You just can't do that. As far as the legal realm goes, what I'm talking about is our legal department at WSU makes the determinations on whether or not we can meet a requested accommodation, and that whether, and the UWs might be a little different. And so the two programs, we just need to, Nancy's going to reach out to her and talk to her, because we just have to make sure that we're on the same page, because when we ask outside organizations to come in and teach or consult, we have to make sure that they are teaching and consulting on the practices that are approved within our own university. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I did not ask for any of that.
Yeah.
Because I did not have the right to ask for any of that. And things had changed since I did it, because when I did it, it was high school and college.
Right.
Now things have gotten back, and now they're just college. And I just found that out, because I've been working on it for a couple of weeks, and just got back to me. So that's why I said I knew that part wouldn't help us. And WSU, because of my own experience with trying to work with kids with disabilities and the horses here, you guys have age limits also that don't match up with the Do It program then, since there's a change to college. And so I knew that didn't work. And that's why she asked me the same question. And I said, you know, I don't want to answer for WSU or 4-H. I know where I stand. Because I'm for what you can do to help any kid. Like, if they're willing to give our 4-H students applications for scholarships and look at them, why not?
Oh, there's
my
no problem.
Opinion. You know, why don't we?
Yeah, there is absolutely no problem with that at all, Carla. But Nancy is going to reach out to them and talk with them, and I'll be following up with that. I'll guarantee you. And maybe she'll delegate and let me reach out to them. And if that's the case, I'd certainly like for you to be involved in those conversations.
Okay, I was going to say I'd love to. She is, I can tell you, does not want, and I understand why. Like, she was afraid that we wanted to make just a whole program or a whole area just for disability only. And I said, no, I just want them to know what your program's about. And so
Yeah.
she said she could do a talk on the program and answer any questions. She was willing to do that on Zoom, but I couldn't get, even Abby and I were working together. We could not get definite answers soon enough to get that worked up to have her do that for us, you know, because
Right,
she would have
right.
done it tonight. But I wasn't sure what we wanted, and I was not going to waste her time. So
Do you
That's
know,
why.
Carla, do they offer assistance to youth that are applying? Do they offer application assistance? So help them go through the applications, or do they just distribute them and the kids or the parents fill them out?
No, when we did it, the school gave it to me, so I knew nothing about what the Do It program was. And at that time, they were across the United States, and then they got cut back to like 4, 6 states when Crystal was in there. And so we filled it out. They did help. They pick out at the time, the delegates, they call them, and you had to sign and agree that you would go to camp for 2 weeks, the first year, and 2 weeks the following year. And they individualized each student and set up a program strictly for them, because like one of them didn't have any hands, so they worked up a computer that they could use their mouth and speak, or a mouth with a stick to move, braille for the ones that were blind. Crystal had her problems, so that's speech impediment ones. So each kid had their own special needs that way. We did not pay a dime for it. And they asked if we needed a computer. We said, well, we have an old one ourselves. And they go, well, if it's okay with you and you want to use your own, we'll just give you a better like system for our computer that, I mean, 20, 30 years ago, when it's $2,000, their cost, not our cost. Our cost would have been like, if you would have went to purchase it, I guess would have been around 10. So that was a lot of money, and we didn't pay a dime. We just had to get there. She had to be there. They paid their food, their lodging, helped with their program. Now they helped her through college. They've improved her programs as far as for her computer as an adult. They help her with job searching. I know that. My daughter and I don't talk too much now, but they've helped them a lot that way. To help with the legalities of a lot of the things with the schools and stuff. So they're great advocates for youth. So,
Sure. And normally when
the cost, so I don't know on that.
Yeah, normally whenever you get a grant to work with a certain population, all of those things are free to that population. And so the reason why I was asking is we're not the population that they are getting funds for working with. So it's likely that they might need funding to be able to work with us. So I'll just have Nancy look into that.
You may want to look into it, because her and I talked, being a nurse, their grant is for science related. So all of our agriculture fits into the science related program.
Sure,
and
but
she goes, yeah, it does.
Yeah, sure, but
so does the technology.
Yeah, their target audience though is college kids. And so they've had to change it.
Yeah.
And it happens to every good program you have out there. You have grant funding for a certain period of time, and then it goes away and you have to start limiting your focus and limiting your focus, and that's probably what's happened to them. It's very difficult to continue.
Yeah, and when you have that small of a group, just strictly disabled students, it makes it tougher. And so, yes, they're now just college-bound students. So that sort of blew my idea with helping more of the 4-H kids. But I figured our 4-H kids, we've got a bunch of amazing kids graduating. They may be able to go on to some of these jobs that, I think they're fulfilling, but that's because I'm an advocate for that type of stuff too, so. So is there any other questions?
I have one for you, Carla. Thinking
I
back
do.
on your 4-H experience and your youth's experience being a parent that had a youth that needed extra help, what could a 4-H have done, or what had you wished 4-H had done, or what do you want to herald that 4-H did do that helped in that experience?
I think it's sort of like how things are today. Like they say, these kids are growing up, seeing one another. It's like my daughter, when she went to this program, there was a kid that didn't have any arms. And they figured out that they wanted to dye their hair. And this kid had amazing black, thick hair. And so they all got together. Crystal couldn't read. There was another kid that was smarter than a whip. So he read the box. Crystal's hands worked great. So she put the stuff on their hair and they learned how to work together. And they all dyed their hair. And when they come back, they still remember that group of kids because all the mothers freaked out. But it was sort of funny because they learned how to work together. And I think the youth learned how to work together better than adults learn how to work together. And that's what I think I learned through having a daughter with a disability and this program. But this program also helped show them independence so much that, like now, my daughter and I don't speak as much, So there's good and bad to everything. But I think the thing I liked about it is my daughter was able to go to state fair and she did a presentation and a talk on disabilities and stuff. And it was pretty impressive with that. And so it gave her an out. And by them working together, it was great, I thought, because she could take what she learned from both of them and do the talk at state fair. So, and I think that some of our kids are afraid, and I know my generation was brought up, you sort of held your disabilities and you compensate for them. And like my father-in-law told us when we were going through all this, everybody has a disability. Some you see, some you don't. And when you look at it that way, it puts us all on equal grounds. And we learn to help one another. And I think that's what 4-H and the Do It program with my daughter taught me the most, working together with it. So both of them worked hand in hand for me. So that's why I was hoping it'd still work, but where they're into only college students, it'll help our seniors if they're interested, but that's it. Except for knowledge base, they're willing to help us with that stuff if we need it. And volunteers, they said. Did that answer your question?
Okay, now's a good time.
Karen, having raised Monica in 4-H with wheelchair dependent and also developmentally delayed, I think 4-H is just a wonderful structure for kids with disabilities because it's set up for the kids to help each other, especially those with more experience. And when we teach our kids to nurture younger youth or more inexperienced youth or youth with disabilities, they learn some critical thinking in how to teach and how to make things work and what works, what is never going to work, whatever. So I think it's a lesson both directions for benefiting youth with the disability as well as the youth that's trying to teach it. So, and all of our families gone through 4-H with us have learned from the experience of having a youth with a disability in a club. So, very positive.
Yeah, I was impressed with some of the presentations were just amazing. And like I said, being a nurse, I left there crying with their presentations, and I learned something from them scientifically. So I know that they could also help our 4-H kids even more, and our 4-H kids can help them. So that's why I was trying to get these two programs sort of to work together, but it may not because of the age gap.
So if I can pick on you guys for a minute, Mr. and Mrs. Gresham, what tools have, what Carla's been talking about
Who is Mr. and Mrs. Gresham?
I want to know that too.
What are some tools that you guys used in your experiences? We've been talking about the Do It program, but what are some tools that you use, programs or otherwise, that helped in your experience?
Well, you have to get the community working with you. Monica showed llamas, so our superintendents had to put some thought into the building of some of the obstacles and things that Monica would have to be required to go through. They did adapt so that she would have an extra person on a lead rope to center the animal or something like that. They adapted the program and worked with us on what would be needed to get her through courses and things like that. It's a lot easier being the leaders of the club, that we could control the locations and things like that for wheelchair accessibility and whatever. So if you're the family that's dependent on another leader to do it, it might be more difficult, and more communication would have to happen between the family and the leaders. We've also had kids in our clubs with disabilities and encourage people to sit down with the family and talk about what their expectations are and what they expect of us as a club and a leader in a program, and get it clearly defined. I think that's a good thing to do with any family in 4-H, but it's definitely a need when you have a youth with a disability trying to participate, because with any youth with disability, they're not going to achieve not necessarily going to achieve the top of the level of expectations, but that doesn't mean they're not going to succeed in 4-H. They're just going to succeed in different ways. So make sure you understand what those expectations are.
So Peggy, this is Jana.
I
think you pointed out something really important, and that's that you and Kirk were the leaders. And so you were able to prepare the program in such a way that Monica was fully able to participate. Would your advice be to club leaders that are looking at having youth that are differently abled in their club to really be in communication with those families and with those parents about what works for their kids?
Absolutely. And, in a school setting, the whole team sits down and develops an IEP, an individual education program. And that needs to happen in 4-H also with whatever the project is, so that you understand what their expectation is. It may be very limited expectations, but when you know what the goal is, then you can help that child celebrate achievements and milestones along the way. No, it's not to get a blue ribbon and win the course or whatever the blah, 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 blah is, but to achieve a small step in the right direction is what they're after. And that works for them. So as long as you have clear communication with the family and understand what their expectation is.
Just keep in mind that the ribbon is based upon effort and not ability.
Right.
That's right. The-
So one of the
Was with-
go ahead, Carla.
Okay, one thing I've seen where 4-H has made leaps and bounds in is now we are going computer with our books and our record books and everything like that. It seems that's where the Do It program and 4-H seem to sort of work together, I think, is because it made it easier for Crystal to do her record books. So, because I would not let them show their animals if they did not do a record book with it. That was my own personal thing as a 4-H leader, as a parent. And so that's one thing 4-H helped a lot, was with the record books, especially when they went computerized, because it was really difficult for her before we had the computer with it. That was something that was a struggle until then. But then when 4-H switched over, it made it a lot easier. And one thing that they did with the kids that may be something that some of the clubs may want to do is they took a day and all the youth had to go around all day long in a wheelchair. They had to get their food in a wheelchair. They had to go in and out of buildings in the wheelchair. They had to, you know, like you could take them to the fairgrounds and you had to do all that stuff. And it made them see what somebody else, their struggle was like. And it made them a little more open and help one another a little bit more that way. But that's some ideas.
Jan,
Carla,
another thing,
go ahead.
Jan, another thing that we dealt with, we also have a shooting sports 4-H club, and the disabled or the youth that needed the assistance there was difficult to keep focused. We had to meet with the parents and say, one of the parents needs to be sort of close to this individual. And even when we got to the county contest, instead of having him, you know, shoot his archery arrow the same distance as all the others, we just moved the target closer. So he was totally successful in what he did and was rewarded accordingly. But his target was a little closer. No one cared. It's just that we matched up his ability with what we could provide a successful environment for this particular youth. And it worked. A lot of coordination with the parents was key to that particular situation.
There's another piece, and that is we are a youth-led program. And sometimes we just need to let the youth figure out how to make sure everybody participates. Kirk, you and Peggy both, you're probably aware, a few years ago, we sent a blind girl to do dressage at State Fair. And the way that we figured out how that worked is, as the adults were standing at the side of the arena going, oh crap, how do we do this? You know, we got to figure this out. The kids figured it out first, and they decided to send kids to every one of the cones, and the kid just yelled out that letter. So that kid knew where to go.
Yep.
But she knew where to go from her ears, not from her sight.
Right.
One of the things that came of that, and this is a question I'm going to have for you, Carla. I got a call from somebody in a different part of the state that said, I don't think it's fair that your rider got to have assistance on the dressage pattern at State Fair. And I said, you are aware, of course, that this young lady is legally blind. Yes, I know, but I think that was unfair advantage. So my knee-jerk reaction was to say, okay, well, next year, I'd be glad to advocate for your child to be able to have the same assistance if you'd be willing to put a blindfold on her. Now, that probably was not the most appropriate answer. So my question is about the Do It Center. Do they teach people how to respond whenever folks bring this up, that it is an unfair advantage that these kids are getting assistance?
Yes, they do. And that's why she asked me, because where I have went through the program with Crystal, she asked me, well, what are they wanting? The legal aspects? Because they have sent their youth to Washington, D.C. to even advocate and put different laws into practice. And like, there was a big push, I know, in our 4-H building here, our annex building, because I'm old. I remember when it was not handicapped accessible, and the Do It program was behind that to help push for all these accessibilities for different kids with disabilities. And so, yes, they would know how to handle it. And it's like, a friend of ours, and my husband, in fact, is dyslexic. And so they have taught us, when we were going through with Crystal, that if you put the writing, like some of our, like PowerPoints, if you use a blue background, it's easier for certain kids with certain disabilities to read that and see it than if it was a pink background. So it depends on their problem for that. Short-term disabilities, you can go over it, 1,000 times. And some things you're just not going to gain, or long-term disabilities. You have to do things a different way for each one of those. And the Do It program was amazing with helping teach you little tricks on how to do that. And so, like, and the kids are smart, like you guys probably know with yours. Crystal was my challenge to raise as a child too. And the school decided that since she had a disability, she only had to get 6 words right out of the 10. Well, she then learned that she could pick 6 words, and that's all she'd have to do. So they also teach you that, yeah, these kids compensate for their disabilities. And in some things where she couldn't read, she was smarter in other areas. And so don't ever count them out. Just use their strong points to work and manipulate, essentially, to get them to do better. And they also learn how to compensate, as I'm sure your guys' daughter did. They learn how to compensate so that they can do what they want to do. And the Do It program was really good with teaching me how to work that and how to achieve our goals a little bit better that way. But I did like your comment about being blind. That might be a fun thing to do, is put blindfolds on everybody and let them try it. No. Maybe not safety wise, but the other way it would be. Helps with their balance. They would have a lot more balance, just from my nursing standpoint also, because of being blind. You compensate for it.
Oh. Well, one of the other things that I think help in 4-H and is building the community. And again, because we're using youth to help youth, they build a relationship with that youth with the disability, and they recognize their successes. So a parent isn't about to step forward. Well, they still may do that, but the kids are going to defend the youth with a disability faster than the leader or another parent will, because they've helped that child achieve whatever success they've had. So the more you can make that youth with the disability part of the community, part of the 4-H program, get them to not only your club activities, but project areas, countywide, statewide. By the time Monica left 4-H, she knew every kid in the llama program in Washington State. So they all knew what she could and couldn't do, and they supported her. And not a parent ever questioned it. So horses is a little more.
They became yeah. I noticed the same thing with Crystal, and then it rubbed off into school and not just 4-H, because there were other youth there that had a boy that had to have a rod in his spine. And when he'd fall over, they just walk by nonchalantly, set him up and keep going so he wasn't embarrassed. But it taught him, even in the school, through 4-H, the school, the Do It program, they became their own family, and they were close. And I think the kids were better at it than the adults, but that was my opinion.
I think sometimes it's a lot more difficult when the disability can't be seen. And that's where I think we face our most opposition is a lot of folks feel like kids with learning disabilities are lazy, and they're unwilling to understand that they still need assistance. There are things we can do, though, to make that easier. So I've always trained volunteers that if a child needed help reading, that we can provide help reading, like for a test or for a judging contest or whatever. But I always tell them, try to set yourself up for not having any questions. So if you're going to ask somebody to read for them, ask another youth or another adult. Don't do it yourself. Don't have the parent do it. So my whole thing was, if it looks like it's inappropriate, people are going to interpret it as inappropriate. So set yourself up for success.
Yes, we always used a youth to help Monica. We never ever had an adult or a leader or anything go into a judging contest or the show ring or anything else with her. It was always a youth. So I think I agree, it's more acceptable to the outside viewpoint to see that happening.
The other thing we're doing more at the state level over the last 3 or 4 years, which we didn't do prior to that, was that we're putting in our guidelines in a very, very sort of soft language that parent or leader, if there is a youth at least at the state level now, that is participating in a program, you need to let the supervisor of the program at the state level aware that there is a situation, so we can accommodate it and make allowances for it if necessary. The worst thing you can do is have a youth come in there and have not a clue potential, and then the youth is not successful because the process wasn't set up right. So we're trying to educate the leaders and the parents at the state level. Say, if you have a situation, just casually let us know, and we will accommodate it.
Well, we also need to make sure that we train our judges on that too.
Absolutely.
So that our judges know. But we have to be able, I mean, it's a big issue. We have to be able to communicate to the judges which children are needing assistance, but then we also have to make sure that we're not communicating in such a manner so that we're outing them, so to speak. So it's pretty difficult, and I hope Nancy asked me to talk to her after this, but what I hope doesn't happen is that we come up with another committee to do something, because my committee schedule is too full. But we are going to have to take a look at how we do this. And we started, well, we didn't do it because I left the county for this position, but we were going to start having our judges watch a 10 to 15 minute video on judging youth. And boy, I'll tell you, our dairy program got wholly angry with me. And they did not want the judges to have to spend any time doing that. But I don't know how else to make sure that our judges treat our kids the way they need to be treated and take into account their needs without us telling them what they are.
Well, we're
Yeah,
very
also-
we're very formidable at the state level. That's the only place I can speak to officially is that at the state level. We talk about it at the board level. We talk about it to the judges. We talk about it to the superintendents. It is a specifically discussable item about how to deal with it, how it should be handled. And as you say, Jana, you have to be careful without, quote, outing them in a very negative way, that you have to present it in a very positive way. And we have viable discussions about this topic before and during state fair level every year.
And if our judges refuse to do it, we don't use them again.
We may not even use them that time.
Exactly.
Well, I know when Crystal did her talk at the state level, that was the proudest she ever was, because there was lots of questions. The people were really responsive to the topic, which at first I was a little bit worried about, but it went great. I think the one thing I know is, like, when you say they have to let people know, the ones you can see, it's easy, so you can help them, like you said. But I know my husband, he just started letting me say he had dyslexia because he was brought up where he was picked on or whatever as a guy for having that disability. So, you know, we work together. Even with our kids here, we had a program, but nobody wanted to do it in Goldendale for horses. And he helped me set up saddles, and we've got a cart because he does a carriage thing for kids with disabilities to ride in and stuff. So, you know, that's one thing. He said, you got to let them be proud, though. What you do, you let the kid be proud, but still help them as much as you can. That's all I'd say.
Any other comments or questions or? Well, as you guys are leaving, if you would check in the comment section or the chat section, we do have an evaluation form. If you guys would fill that out, lets us know if this format, if the formatting, if the subject matter, if you needed anything from us on that. Also, I did link the Do It program URL as well as a URL from Extension on diversity inclusion resources. Disability is closer to the bottom of that list. So if anybody doesn't have any questions, we thank you for joining us. And next month's topic will be, Rachel, I can't remember.
Virtual fairs.
Virtual fairs.
How to celebrate without the fair.
You know, as you know, many county fairs have been canceled already, and it's talking about, you know, 4-H and how to embrace when you don't have fair. So
Are you guys aware that there was already a Zoom this week on that very topic, and it's recorded and it's on the 4-H webpage?
Nope, had no clue.
Yep.
Nope.
It's virtual, what's it called? Virtual showcase, I think.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Abby.
Yeah.
It was, the way I understand it, it was very well put together, and I just uploaded it to the website yesterday, so.
Well, that's good to know. Okay.
And
Yeah.
if you know of anybody, we want to promote this thing as much as we can. It's a over 50-page document that gives you examples of how to do every kind of virtual fair venue that you can possibly imagine, both still life and animal, both. They're all in there, and it gives you a lot of resources and just a lot of ideas And also people to contact if you have a question about something, you know, say, hey, what does this really mean? Just, you know, email the person, they'll help you walk through it. So it's a really usable resource tool at your disposal.
And it'll come out probably in next week's Tuesday News, because Missy and I were uploading it. We didn't have a chance to upload it until Tuesday, so it wasn't ready for prime time, so to speak. So it'll come out probably next week in Tuesday News with the link. But if you're looking for it, if you just go to the Fairs tab on the 4-H website, it's under, you go to Fairs, and I think it says virtual something. It's in there.
Yep.
You know, you were asking about the Do It program with kids. If there are any that have like any reading or learn that type of disability, they'd be amazing to help with the video part for those kids for that. And I'm sure even if they're not in college, that they'd probably be able to help them know which programs would work for their disability, if any clubs have youth like that.
Okay. I gotta go. I'll see you all later.
All right. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jana. Thanks for
Thank
hosting.
you.
Bye now.